Imagine, like, applying to 10 different jobs at 10 different companies, only to realize the exact same robotic bouncer rejected you from all of them.
Oh, man.
Right. And to make it worse, you're legally banned from trying again for almost a year.
Yeah, it sounds wild.
You wouldn't know why, you wouldn't be able to appeal, and here's the kicker, the companies rejecting you might not even fully understand how the decision was made in the first place.
Exactly. And, that scenario is no longer just some hypothetical edge case.
Right. Welcome to the deep dive, by the way. I'm so glad we're talking about this today because for a massive portion of the labor market, this is literally the standard operating procedure now.
It really is. I mean, submitting a resume today basically means feeding your data into this totally opaque, highly centralized infrastructure. And it wields just unprecedented power over your entire career trajectory.
Which brings us to our mission for this deep dive. We are prying open the mechanics of that exact infrastructure. And our grounding source today is it's phenomenal.
It's a massive study.
Massive. It's an independent, large-scale empirical study by Dr. Jonathan H. Westover. It's titled Algorithmic Monocultures in Hiring, Vendor Bias and Systemic Exclusion.
Such a good paper because, it completely bypasses those usual theoretical debates we always hear about AI and HR.
Right, the think pieces.
Yeah, exactly. Instead of just theorizing, Dr. Westover analyzed this astonishing data set. We're talking 4.2 million actual job applications across 156 employers and over 1,700 different positions.
That is just huge.
It is, because that scale is crucial. It allows us to actually see patterns that, individual localized audits simply cannot catch.
Yeah, and looking at the visual backdrop we have set up for this deep dive, I think it sets the tone perfectly.
Oh, the library.
Yeah, it's this vast, towering library, but all the bookshelves have been stripped bare. And they're replaced entirely by rows of these glowing, humming server racks.
It's a great visual. It really represents where the real gatekeeping happens today.
Exactly. Because to grasp how a single string of code can effectively, embargo an applicant from multiple totally independent corporations, we have to look at the vendor market itself.
We really do, because we aren't dealing with a fragmented landscape of, proprietary in-house software anymore.
No, not at all. Over 90% of U.S. employers now use algorithmic decision-making for their initial candidate screening. 90%.
It's basically everyone. And the market providing those algorithms has consolidated so aggressively. I mean, we are dealing with a straight-up oligopoly here.
Right.
A handful of these massive vendors companies like HireVue, Modern Hire, Pymetrics, they control the initial screening for thousands of global employers.
Just a few gatekeepers.
Yeah. To put that in perspective, HireVue alone provides the underlying infrastructure for over 60% of Fortune 100 companies.
That's insane.
And 8 of the 10 largest federal agencies.
Wow. So, okay, let's unpack this. If you apply to 10 different retail or tech giants, you feel like you are knocking on 10 different doors. But this research shows it's actually the exact same robotic bouncer standing behind all 10 doors.
That is exactly what the research refers to as an algorithmic monoculture.
Right.
Think about agriculture. If you plant 1,000 acres with the exact same genetic strain of corn, a single specific blight can wipe out the entire harvest.
Because there's no diversity.
Precisely. In the labor market, if 80 major companies are all using the same cognitive game-based assessment to filter talent, a single blind spot in that algorithm doesn't just result in an isolated bad hire.
It creates a universal wall.
Right. It creates a structural barrier for anyone who falls into that blind spot. And what's fascinating here is why employers flock to these tools in the first place.
Oh, yeah. Why do they do it?
Well, there's massive scaling pressure for high-volume jobs, right? Plus, there's this perceived objectivity. They think they're avoiding human bias. And then you add in aggressive vendor marketing and this huge institutional bandwagon effect. Everyone else is doing it, so you have to do it too.
Even if the tools are going way beyond standard resume parsers, right?
Yeah.
Just scanning for keywords.
Way beyond. The study focuses heavily on game-based assessments and predictive behavioral modeling.
The online games.
Exactly. Interactive modules applicants have to complete, and the vendors claim these games can quantify cognitive and personality traits.
By measuring what, like how fast you click?
Yeah, literally milliseconds of reaction time, keystroke dynamics, risk propensity, pattern recognition.
Right.
The algorithm then maps those behavioral data points against their proprietary model of what a successful employee looks like.
But wait, if we look at the mechanics of these algorithms, we really have to question what they are actually measuring.
Absolutely.
I mean, if an AI measures your processing speed by tracking how quickly you click moving targets on a screen, it might not be measuring your intrinsic cognitive ability at all.
Nope.
It might simply be measuring your familiarity with computer gaming interfaces.
Exactly.
And we know that familiarity is deeply correlated with socioeconomic status, which is obviously highly correlated with demographics.
Right, and you've just described the core mechanism of proxy bias.
Right.
Algorithms are exceptionally good at finding correlations, but they have zero capacity to understand causation or, like, social context.
They just see the data.
Yeah. The vendor's model isn't explicitly instructed to filter out specific demographic groups. Instead, it optimizes for a variable like cursor reaction time that inadvertently serves as a proxy for race, age, or gender.
Which naturally leads to the claim from these vendors that, oh, don't worry, our tools are rigorously audited for fairness.
Right, they all say that.
In the study, the vendor behind a major game-based assessment biometrics claimed their algorithm showed no concerning demographic disparities across their systems.
Yeah.
They pointed to their aggregate data and argued, look, the system is functioning equitably.
And this is where Dr. Westover's research completely dismantles that corporate narrative. He explains this illusion of aggregate fairness.
Okay, break that down for us.
So under U.S. employment law, the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, the EEOC, relies on the 4/5 rule to determine adverse impact.
The 80% rule.
Exactly. Essentially, the selection rate for any demographic group cannot be less than 4/5 or 80% of the rate for the group with the highest selection rate.
Right, makes sense.
But crucially, this metric cannot just be averaged across an entire software platform. It has to be evaluated on a position-by-position basis.
Wait, so if an algorithm systematically rejects Black candidates for a high-paying engineering role, but overselects them for a low-paying warehouse role, the vendor just averages them together and calls the whole system unbiased.
Yes.
That's incredibly misleading.
It is. Averaging those outcomes produces this mathematically balanced top-line number, but it completely obscures the discriminatory sorting happening underneath.
Wow. So what did Dr. Westover find when he actually dug into the numbers?
When he took those 4.2 million applications and disaggregated the data, looked at the outcomes at the individual position level, the vendor's claims of equity just collapsed.
I bet.
The data revealed that 10.62% of the roles showed adverse impact against Black applicants,
Jeez.
and 5.32% showed adverse impact against Asian applicants.
We are talking about over 150,000 specific applications in this data set being subjected to per-position disparities. And it was all entirely hidden by the vendor's aggregate reporting.
Yep. This highlights why structural auditing methodologies matter just as much as the audits themselves.
Right, how you measure matters.
Exactly. And the study actually cites Microsoft as an entity that recognized this vulnerability early on.
Oh, really? What do they do?
They do not rely on global aggregate fairness metrics for their hiring models. They actually mandate distinct, isolated fairness assessments for specific role families.
That makes total sense.
Right. So the algorithm filtering software engineers is audited entirely separately from the algorithm filtering support staff or business analysts.
Because they understand that a model might be perfectly equitable in identifying, say, sales traits, but be fundamentally biased when assessing technical traits.
Exactly.
But even if we establish that these models make position-specific errors that disproportionately impact certain demographics, we still have to contend with the network effect of the monoculture.
Oh, yeah. The network effect is brutal.
Because normally, if one company's human recruiter misjudges you, your logical response is simply to apply to a different company.
Right. You move on.
But because of vendor consolidation, the applicant is often unknowingly interfacing with the exact same underlying model again and again and again.
Yes. The study calls this phenomenon outcome homogenization.
Outcome homogenization.
Yeah. In a fragmented market with human recruiters, your rejection from company A has literally no bearing on your application to company B.
Right. Human subjectivity creates variance. One recruiter hates your resume, the next one loves it.
Exactly. But in an algorithmic monoculture, the evaluation is perfectly rigidly consistent. The data revealed that among candidates who applied to 10 different positions across different employers using the shared infrastructure, 4% were rejected from every single one.
A 4% universal rejection rate across 10 separate corporate entities. I mean, that far exceeds statistical random chance.
Far exceeds it.
That is the mathematical fingerprint of an algorithm identifying a specific type of applicant profile and just systematically purging it from the ecosystem.
It creates a correlated lockout, and the mechanism enforcing this lockout is incredibly aggressive.
Here's where it gets really interesting, and by interesting I mean terrifying. The source text documents that Thiometrics prohibits applicants from retaking their game-based assessments for 330 days.
After 130 days, your score is just locked into your profile.
Imagine taking the SATs on a bad day, getting a terrible score, and every single college in the country automatically rejects you based on that one test, and you aren't allowed to try again for almost a year.
It's a nightmare.
And worst of all, they don't even tell you that's why you were rejected.
No, the opacity is absolute. You never know that a 10-month-old behavioral game is the specific mechanism triggering your current rejections.
You're just getting automated no emails.
Exactly. You get no feedback, there's no mechanism to appeal the data, and you can't request a manual override. The economic and psychological toll of this is just profound.
I can't even imagine.
Labor economists actually refer to this as the scarring effect of extended unemployment.
The scarring effect.
Yeah.
And the simulation analysis in Dr. Westover's study actually puts hard numbers on that.
It really does.
To dilute the impact of these correlated rejections and get their systemic rejection rate down to a normal baseline of 0.1%, an applicant trapped in this algorithmic blind spot might need to submit up to 25 separate applications.
It's exhausting.
The monoculture functionally doubles the required labor of job seeking for marginalized candidates.
You're forced to significantly outwork the baseline just to overcome a centralized mathematical bias.
Right.
And this brings up a fundamental question regarding the utility of these systems for the employers themselves.
Right, like, are they even getting good employees out of this?
Exactly. If these algorithms are generating massive structural vulnerabilities, excluding viable talent and necessitating complex bias audits, the predictive validity of the tools must be extraordinary to justify their use.
Right, you would assume they're practically magic.
But the empirical data on construct validity suggests these systems are built on incredibly shaky psychological foundations.
And construct validity is basically the measure of whether a test actually quantifies what it claims to quantify, right?
Yes. Like, does a game where you inflate digital balloons accurately measure your real-world risk management skills in a complex corporate environment?
Let me guess it doesn't.
The psychometric data indicates that it often does not. A critical component of construct validity is retest reliability.
Meaning, if I take it twice, I should get the same score.
Right. If a psychological trait is supposedly intrinsic to you, your score should remain relatively stable across multiple testing sessions. But the research shows extreme instability in game-based assessments.
How extreme?
Well, a candidate might score in the 80th percentile for altruism on a Monday, and then the 40th percentile on a Thursday.
What? Just from playing a game?
Yeah. It's heavily influenced by transient factors like user state, environmental distractions, how much sleep you got, or even minor user interface changes.
But if the underlying measurement fluctuates wildly like that, then any predictive model built on top of it is inherently flawed.
Exactly.
It's attempting to extract a permanent behavioral profile from a highly volatile data source.
Yes. And the vendors have routinely failed to publish robust, externally peer-reviewed evidence proving that high performance in their proprietary games actually correlates with long-term job performance.
Or like higher promotion rates or tenure.
Right. They are effectively selling the aesthetic of data science, fancy dashboards, metrics, and cognitive profiles, without the rigorous predictive validity required to back it up.
And we are starting to see the corporate market react to this, right? Like, they're realizing they've delegated critical talent acquisition to flawed models.
Definitely. The study details several high-profile interventions. IBM, for instance.
Oh, right, the IBM pilot.
Yeah, they ran a comprehensive year-long pilot program. They let their AI system evaluate candidates and generate predictions, but simultaneously, they had human hiring managers making independent evaluations to serve as a control group.
And what happened?
When they analyzed the outcomes, the AI's predictions correlated very weakly with the actual long-term performance of the hires.
Wow.
So IBM subsequently restricted their AI screening tools exclusively to entry-level, high-volume roles where the cost of a bad hire is low. They returned the specialized, high-stakes hiring back to human managers.
And JP Morgan Chase did something similar, didn't they?
They did. They had deployed a video interview AI that analyzed candidates' facial movements and speech patterns.
Sounds incredibly dystopian.
It does. But upon review by an internal ethics and analytics committee, they discovered the system was producing unexpected demographic disparities.
Disparities that the vendor's initial audits completely missed, of course.
Exactly. So JP Morgan just paused the use of the technology for the affected positions rather than risk compounding the bias.
And then you have Unilever, who took a different approach. They tackled the transparency problem.
Right. They redesigned their candidate communication protocols.
Instead of issuing generic, automated rejection emails, their system was reconfigured to actually inform candidates about the specific skills and traits the algorithm evaluated.
Which is huge, providing actual feedback and a mechanism for the applicant to respond.
But perhaps the most structural corporate intervention in the study is Accenture's deliberate deployment of what they call algorithmic pluralism.
That is such a fascinating counter-strategy. They recognize the systemic danger of a monoculture.
Right, so instead of standardizing a single vendor's platform across their entire global operation, just for the sake of, like, procurement efficiency, they intentionally utilize different AI vendors.
And varying screening models for different geographic regions and distinct business units.
They are basically artificially introducing ecological diversity back into their hiring pipeline.
Exactly. By using a diverse portfolio of algorithms, they ensure that if one vendor's model contains a persistent blind spot for a specific demographic, that talent pool isn't universally locked out of the whole corporation.
Multiple models mean multiple distinct pathways for unconventional talent to bypass any single algorithmic failure.
It's a really smart way to handle it internally.
But let's examine the role of the human recruiters in all of this. Because the standard defense of algorithmic screening is always the human-in-the-loop argument.
Yes, the human in the loop.
The premise is that the AI doesn't make the final decision, it merely generates a recommendation, and a trained human recruiter reviews it to catch any obvious errors.
It is a very comforting premise. But the research reveals a deeply counterintuitive reality about human-computer interaction. When human decision makers are integrated into algorithmic workflows, they do not consistently act as a neutral safety net.
Wait, really?
In many cases, adding a human in the loop actually exacerbates the discriminatory outcomes.
How does inserting a human review process make the final decision more biased?
It comes down to well-documented cognitive biases, specifically the anchoring effect and motivated reasoning.
Okay.
When a human recruiter opens a candidate's profile and sees a machine-generated score that flags them as a low match, the human's cognitive baseline immediately anchors to that negative assessment.
So they're already biased before they even read the resume.
Exactly. It takes significantly more mental effort to investigate and override a machine's rejection than it does to simply accept it.
The path of least resistance.
Right. And furthermore, if a recruiter holds implicit biases against a certain demographic, the algorithmic score provides this veneer of objective mathematical data to justify those biases.
Wow. So they aren't rejecting the candidate based on a gut feeling.
No, they are rejecting them because the advanced analytics platform suggested it. The machine effectively launders the human's bias.
The human isn't auditing the machine. The machine is providing an alibi for the human.
That is a perfect way to put it.
That completely neutralizes the human-in-the-loop defense. I mean, if we can't rely on human recruiters to intuitively override algorithmic errors, and we can't assume every corporation possesses the internal analytics capabilities to constantly audit their vendors,
then the burden of fixing this system requires macro-level interventions.
Right. So what protects the listener? What can actually be done?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the study makes it explicitly clear that individual applicants possess zero leverage against centralized AI vendors.
You can't negotiate with a black box.
You really can't. Addressing an algorithmic monoculture requires structural, society-wide policy mechanisms, and the first major intervention proposed is mandatory researcher access.
Taking a cue from recent tech regulations in the European Union, right?
Exactly. The EU's Digital Services Act forces massive social media and tech platforms to open their back-end data to vetted independent researchers.
And the hiring technology sector needs an identical mandate.
Yes. Society cannot rely on vendors privately auditing their own proprietary models and releasing curated summaries. Independent academics and data scientists must have the legal right to continuously stress test these deployed systems.
For systemic bias and their real-world economic impacts.
Absolutely.
Okay, so that's the first fix. What's the second?
The second structural fix addresses the current weakness of transparency laws, specifically focusing on the creation of public bias audit registries.
Because right now, localized attempts at regulation are easily bypassed.
Oh, incredibly easily. The study points to New York City's AI hiring law, which technically mandates that companies conduct bias audits if they use automated employment decision tools.
Sounds good on paper.
Right, but the law contains massive loopholes regarding how that information is actually shared. It allows corporations to bury the results of those audits in, like obscure footers or deeply nested pages of their corporate websites.
A transparency law that allows the data to be hidden is functionally useless.
Exactly. An applicant should not be required to scour the back-end architecture of a company's website to determine if the portal is structurally biased against them.
So what's the alternative?
The research advocates for centralized, highly visible public databases where audit results are aggregated and standardized. Applicants need clear, upfront visibility into which companies are utilizing high-risk tools before they invest their time.
Makes total sense. And the third proposed structural intervention.
It shifts the focus to collective action, worker data cooperatives.
Okay, what is that?
Well, if a single job seeker is powerless to challenge an algorithmic rejection, aggregating their data provides immense leverage. Data cooperatives operate on the principles of traditional labor unions but are adapted for the digital economy.
Relying on data rights frameworks like the GDPR in Europe or the CCPA in California.
Right. A cooperative could aggregate the application histories, algorithmic interactions, and outcome data of thousands of job seekers.
And if a cooperative pools that data, they can reverse engineer the black box.
Exactly. They could mathematically prove that a specific vendor's game-based assessment is systemically filtering out, say, applicants over the age of 50.
Or neurodivergent candidates.
Exactly. Armed with that aggregated proof, the cooperative has the empirical leverage to demand immediate transparency.
They can force regulatory reviews or compel employers to abandon the vendor entirely. It shifts the monopoly on data away from the vendors and back toward the labor force.
It is about democratizing the analytics. If the vendors are using mass data to evaluate the workers require mechanisms to use mass data to evaluate the vendors.
That is brilliant. This research completely reframes how we need to view the modern hiring process.
It really does.
I mean, algorithms were introduced to the labor market under the promise of hyper-efficiency and the eradication of human bias.
That was the pitch.
But, as Dr. Westover's analysis of 4.2 million applications demonstrates, aggressive market consolidation has mutated those localized deficiencies into a massive structural vulnerability.
We no longer live in an era where individual companies make isolated hiring mistakes based on a single recruiter's flawed judgment.
No, we live in an era where a single algorithmic model can enact systemic, labor market-wide exclusion.
The centralization of decision-making power has fundamentally altered how economic opportunity is distributed.
So if you are out there navigating this landscape and you find yourself facing a wall of inexplicable, instantaneous rejections from multiple companies, this research provides vital context.
It really is important to know.
Those rejections may not be an accurate reflection of your talent or the formatting of your resume or your professional worth.
Not at all.
You might simply be caught in a single vendor's algorithmic blind spot, suffering from a 330-day shadow ban that has been silently applied across your entire industry. It is the mathematical failure of the system, not a personal failure of the applicant.
That's the most important takeaway, I think.
But as we close out this deep dive, I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over, one that looks beyond just the immediate demographic bias we've discussed.
Okay.
We know that these centralized game-based algorithms are actively measuring and optimizing for highly specific cognitive traits, exact milliseconds of processing speed, specific tolerances for risk, standardized styles of pattern recognition.
Right.
And we know that a single vendor's model can dominate the hiring infrastructure of the Fortune 100.
Yeah, the monoculture.
So, if the entire global economy slowly standardizes on a single algorithmically defined psychological profile of what constitutes a good worker, what happens to the outliers?
That's a great question.
Are we inadvertently building an infrastructure designed to permanently filter out the exact kind of neurodivergent, unconventional, or disruptive thinkers who have historically driven society's greatest innovations?
Oh, yeah.
By ruthlessly optimizing the labor market for the perfectly compliant corporate employee today, could these algorithmic monocultures be quietly engineering a macroeconomic innovation deficit for tomorrow?
It's a terrifying thought.
It really raises the question of what kind of vital, necessary genius is currently trapped behind those glowing server racks, locked out by a machine that was never programmed to recognize it.